Well, welcome back to another edition of Gale Force Winds. I'm Allan Dale, and here I am in Toronto Airport, going to be a part of an international election observation mission. There'll be 200 people on this mission and only 5 Canadians, and I'll be one of those. This is the second time that I've done that, and many of you will remember from the first episode, which was in Serbia 1 year ago. I'm doing this to honor my dad, Al Dale. My dad did a number of these missions around the world, and I wanted to honor his legacy and continue doing the exact same thing. So this one's going out to another one for Dad. So here it is. So many people have asked me since the last episode, how do I get involved in these things? Well, first and foremost, there's a company called CANADEM. So that's CANADEM. So CANADEM. CANADEM, Canada Elections Monitor. You go on their website and you'll see there all of their missions that they do and the work that they're doing right now. But on there's also an ability to upload your resume, to get into a pool of people that want to support this type of work. You must understand that first and foremost, this is all voluntary work. Of course, all of your travel expenses are covered. Everything that you need to spend money on in the country as it relates to your existence there, food and accommodation, that's all covered. But you're not getting paid to go do this. So that might turn some people off right out of the gate, but I can tell you the adventure, the ability to be part of the democratic process that well outweighs any money that you could ever get. So CANADEM is your first stop. Now, CANADEM is an agency within the Government of Canada who, when they get tapped by Global Affairs Canada to send people to these missions, they indeed search out that pool of people that you've just put yourself in, registered in, put your resume in. They'll reach out to that pool of people that get help with these elections. These elections are indeed all around the world. You might ask yourself, how do you separate yourself from the pack? Well, CANADEM is really looking for a diversity of people to attend these elections. Just like Canada is a diverse place, they're looking for a diversity of people to attend these events. And that also includes geography. So they're looking for people east, west, north, and south in Canada to go participate in these things. So I always tell people, get your name on their register, put yourself there. That's the very first step, because it's so rewarding when you do this type of work. So I'm off to Moldova. Now Moldova, many of you will probably not even know where it is, but basically it's a small country sandwiched between Romania and the Ukraine. And it's a country that is a result of the split up of the Soviet Union, and that country is now about to have a presidential election. Now, not only are they having a presidential election, but they're also holding a referendum, which is an indicator to the government should they proceed down the path of joining the EU. So it's really two things in one: presidential election as well as a question, a referendum to the people of Moldova, should we go down the path of joining the EU? And that's indeed why I'm going over to be an observer in that mission. One thing you should know, that when you go do this work, you're not over there to stop a process, get involved in the process. You're simply there to observe. You're there to observe the process as it unfolds and make note of anything that you might see that might be out of the ordinary. And of course, they give you all of these briefings to make sure that you're completely up to speed on exactly what are the type of things that you're looking to observe when you go there. So this is just day one. This is the travel day. There's a whole series of videos that I'll roll out over the next 8 days, so you can go through the whole mission with me. I did this for Serbia, and I got a great deal of response, for positive response. People who were very interested in exactly what I was doing over there. Well, we're going to do the same thing now for Moldova. We'll spell it all out and how the whole election process works. But the very first step is go over there to CANADEM. Have a read about all of the incredible work that they're doing. But most importantly, register yourself on their site so that you too can be available to do this incredible work. I'm Allan Dale from Gale Force Winds. It's an absolute pleasure to take you on this journey with me. Stay tuned. So that really completes day one of travel, and it sort of morphs into day two. It's been a full 24 hours of travel from Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, to Chisinau, Moldova. The cool part about the travel day, while it is somewhat tiring as you go through it, but at each leg of the journey, you start to meet more and more people that are heading off to the mission. And indeed, from Warsaw to Chisinau, pretty much the entire plane, we're all heading in to do the election observation. So while you stop in Canada, you meet some of those other Canadians that are going to do it. You connect up with each other on WhatsApp. You meet in the airport. You kind of get to know each other during your travel day, which is all very fascinating. People come from all different backgrounds. So on this particular mission, we have people from a student who's a Canadian who's living in Scotland. We have a university professor from the Yukon. We have another government employee from Government Affairs Canada, actually, from Ottawa. So all these people come together. You get to learn a little bit about their backstories and sort of their hopes and aspirations for the mission. So it's really kind of neat to meet the people along the way and get to know them. And then, as I say, in Warsaw, now you have a more international body of people that are all heading into Moldova. And what's really interesting is you tend to run into some people that you've met before. I met a wonderful person the last election in Serbia from France, connected up with her again at the Warsaw airport. We traveled from Warsaw into Moldova together, and it was great to catch up with one another. So it's a long travel day for sure. Rest is something that you sort of grab every moment that you can, but the level of excitement leading into sort of starting this whole process is pretty high. So you're amped up and you can't really sort of rest anyway. You're pretty excited about what's to happen today. So the day 1 and 2 sort of blend together because of the travel. But today is really the sort of kickoff of it all, and this will be our official briefings. And they're going to go through everything, sort of the political landscape of what's happening, all the parties that are running, or in this case, presidential candidates that are running. They'll go through even the technical details of how you go about filling in your forms the next day and all of that kind of stuff. They'll break down the regions that everybody's going to go to. So it's a pretty exciting time. And today is the first time that you connect up with your partner, the person that you're going to be working with for the next 5 or 6 days. And in my case, it's a woman from Poland. I've yet to meet her. I'll meet her today. But you get to connect up with them. So you spend the whole day sort of seated side by side while you go through an entire day of lectures sort of leading up to the election. So today is a big information session day, but it's also an exciting time to meet the people that you're going to be working with. It's very exciting. It's very rewarding. It's very international feel to it all. But at the end of the day, you're all there for the same common goal, and that is to observe an election. And it's really fascinating when you hear everybody's stories and why they're doing it and how many times they've done it. Many people have only done it one time, like me. Some, it's their first time, and they're quite nervous about the whole process. And people like me, and obviously people with a lot more experience, are sort of saying, oh, just take your time and it will all work out. But it's it certainly makes for an exciting day. So today, it's all about the briefings. It's all about understanding how the presidential election will roll out. And I'll report back at the end of the day. I'm also hoping to capture some conversations with my Canadian colleagues over the course of this, learn a little bit about them and find out what they hope to gain out of all of this. So stay tuned for a wrap up of the big briefing day today, and then we'll roll right into the election day by day, and I'll take you through the whole sequence. But my first impressions of Moldova are that it is a pretty modern city, and driving in from the airport last night, it was very clear that they have a lot of amenities here. It's a modern European city. I look forward to seeing it more in the daylight and give a different perspective there. But certainly the hotel, the people, all wonderful so far. Stay tuned. I look forward to bringing you along this journey with me. I'm Allan Gale Force Winds from Chisinau, Moldova. Well, I'm Allan from Gale Force Winds on a chilly sort of October morning in Chisinau, Moldova. Yesterday we talked about how it was all a day around preparation for the upcoming election. We're 2 days away now from the election, so just to kind of recap what yesterday was all about, there was well over 200 observers from all around the world in a hotel in Chisinau, where we received briefings, everything from sort of a 30,000 foot view of the political landscape, the media landscape, everything leading up to the country. Just to remind you, this election is about two things. There's two votes in one is the best way to describe it. One is a vote for the president of the country, of which there are 11 candidates running. And the other one is a referendum on whether to clear a path to join the EU. Not to join the EU, but to strategically as a country go down that direction. So two big decisions that people have to make, the president and whether they have a desire to be a part of the European Union. So talked a lot about the political landscape, talked a lot about the media coverage around that, everything from traditional media to social media, how some of those things are sort of playing out in the public sphere leading up to the election. So it started at that sort of high level, and then we worked ourselves right down to actually what it is that we do as observers for this election. And that is really the key to this, is that word observer. That's exactly what we do. We're not here to say what's right or say what's wrong. We're simply here to observe what's happening in the election. And the reason we do that is just so that there's an impartial group of people that can say this is how we saw things happen. And the other interesting thing is too, we as observers sometimes may see little things, but in the context of it all, it may not be that important. They need all of the observers to kind of report in, and then they start developing a picture in real time, over time, about the whole election. So while you might think something might be significant or might stand out, it needs to be really put into the context of the broader thing. There's over 200 observers, and each one of those groups of people, they'll be put into teams of two. So really there's like 100 little groups traveling around, and they'll go anywhere from 10 to upwards of 12 or 13 polling stations in a day. It's a lot of area that they're covering. There's a lot of things that they're going to see, and so they're going to sort of capture all of that data over time during the day, and then it'll build a picture as they go on. So we're there really to observe, and so we got really down into the technical details of how we do that. Now, this organization has evolved over time, election observation. When my dad was doing it, he would be filling out forms, and they would have to sort of find somewhere in the community at a post office or something, an ability to fax that form back in sort of to the head group where they're sort of monitoring everything. When I started to do it, we were using electronic pens, which were very slick. You would fill out all the information, you'd kind of hit send with the pen. But now it's actually all just on an app. So it's on an app on the phone, and you just fill in the data as you go. And it's very, very, I don't want to say it's simple, but it's very user-friendly. It's very user-friendly to enter all this data. So they've really sort of embraced the technology, and it speeds up the entire process, making it really quite easy for the observers to focus more on what they're there to do, which is observation, as opposed to the administrative details of getting that information back. So yesterday was really all about sort of learning how we do that, learning what we're looking for, big picture stuff, right down to the nitty gritty of it all. Met my teammate yesterday, and my teammate is from Poland. It's her third election, but it's been 1 decade since she's done an election. So we're both sort of new to it, I guess. It's only my second. So we're both new to it, but we have a bit of an understanding. And certainly with the briefing that we received, we feel very well prepared. So that was yesterday in a nutshell. Now today, again, it's cold October morning. We're now heading out into the regions that we're all assigned to. And my region is a place called Bolch. and Balch is sort of north in the country, northwest in the country, and we'll base out of there, and then our polling stations will be all spread out there. Moldova is not a large country, so we're really only a 2-hour drive from sort of our central point of Balch, and then from there we'll sort of pan out over the next few days. So we're excited to get out into the countryside, sort of see a different side of Moldova other than the big city, which, by the way, Chisinau is a beautiful city, very modern. You can see right now they're setting up for Christmas markets. It's very vibrant and lively here today. But we're about to head out into the countryside, and Balch, I'm led to believe, is sort of the industrial hub of Moldova. So looking forward to kind of seeing how that contrasts against this incredible city of Chisinau. So that's what we're off to today. We're heading out into the country, and very excited about that. I'll kind of report back the end of the day how that whole process went. But for now, I'll show you some great sights of them setting up for the Christmas market, and stay tuned to more right here from Moldova. I want to tell you, it's a beautiful place. Highly recommend it. But I can tell you what else is beautiful is watching an election play out in person. You feel like you're part of something important, and you really are. It's a real international flavor to it. The people, the conversations you had. Just for example, last night, I went out with a French colleague, an American colleague, a British gentleman who was a former ambassador here, as well as Moldova's top 35 under 35 person. She was an AI expert, and just the conversation was so nuanced and so beautiful. It was a wonderful evening out, and the food was simply fantastic and very, very affordable. Moldova, put it on your travel list. Put being an election observer on your bucket list, because both are worth doing. So here I am. I'm now out into the countryside in Moldova. Left Chisinau today, sort of boarded up a whole group of people that were going out into a certain region of Moldova. Our first stop here was a place called Belch, and in Belch we met our long-term observers. And the term long-term observer, or LTO, in essence, these are folks that have come here on the 20th of September, figuring out sort of the lay of the land, understanding the political landscape, understanding the media, watching the campaigns unfold, finding all of the polling stations, meeting with the election officials. Basically, they are the people that are doing all the work ahead of time before us, called short-term observers, arrive. We're only really in country for about 7 days. They're here for 4 to 6 to 8 weeks long, getting everything ramped up. So we met our long-term observers. One was from Greece, the other one was from Germany, and they briefed us on sort of how this region is responding to both the presidential election and the referendum around the EU. So it's a very interesting region that I'm in. It's very sort of heavily dominated by Russian-speaking people. Russian is often used as the first language in this particular area, as opposed to Romanian or Moldovan. It's a very interesting region. Beautiful countryside. It reminds me of Wales. It reminds me of Prince Edward Island. Rolling hills, a lot of agriculture, but very small farms, not big, large industrial farms, small farms, a lot of cattle, a lot of cows out on the road, sort of chained on the side of the road, and they're all it's a very, very peaceful place. Simply beautiful countryside. So we went from Belch, now we're in a town called Goldini. And in Goldini, this is where we're sort of based out of. So we started with 200 people in Chisinau. We reduced that down to about 20 in Belch, and now we're only 6 of us here in Goldini. Tomorrow, we'll sort of plan out our route. We've got our polling stations that we want to go visit. All that has been clearly identified to us now. So we've got all the pieces of the puzzle. Now tomorrow is the day where we sort of plan our whole route out. But I want to tell you that this is a very, very cool place. You can smell sort of wood burning from the houses and things like that. It's the road system is sort of rudimentary here, but the landscape is simply beautiful. We're in sort of the main hotel in the area. It's a kind of a bed and breakfast with a built-in restaurant that serves nothing but Moldovan cuisine. So we're sort of looking forward to that tonight, and we'll probably all get together tonight and dine as a small little group. The other thing that's great today is that we got to meet our interpreters and our drivers. Now, in my case, our interpreter, she's an English teacher here in Belch, in this part of Moldova, Moldova, sorry. And the driver is also from this part of the country, and so he doesn't speak any English at all. In fact, he only speaks Russian. And our interpreter, she speaks Romanian, Moldovan, she speaks English, French, and German, I believe. So we're well connected with her. She's an English teacher here, as I said. And so we met them today. So now they're traveling with us for the next 4 days. So in the countryside, this is our first sort of impression of the area that we're going to be working in. Tomorrow will be somewhat of a slower day as we plan out Election Day. And when Election Day hits, it's going to be busy. So tomorrow is as much about sort of getting rest as it is about planning, as is tonight. Tonight is an exercise in getting rest when you can, so that you're good and rested up 2 days from now. So that's my report from sort of that day that we moved out into the regions. I'm Allan Dale, Gale Force Winds, and coming to you live, Moldova. Thank you. Well, today we left Goldini and headed into the countryside. And I want to tell you what a rewarding experience that was. We traveled well into the villages where we saw basically wild, your chickens and geese and everything out in the streets, walking around. Small rural farms with people with horse and carriages, tending their land. It was actually something to see. It was really quite spectacular. Met some wonderful people. And our job today was really to go to the polling stations and make sure that the polling stations were all set up, getting ready for the day's activities. We were there simply to observe the polling station, and that was really it, just watch what was unfolding. But the whole goal of today was sort of planning out your route for tomorrow. And tomorrow is going to be a busy day. It kicks off at 6 in the morning and it goes right until 9 p.m. at night when the polls close. Then you have to go to the tabulation centers. So we will probably end somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning. So today was all about planning that out, understanding the route you're going to take tomorrow, and then that way you'll be able to get through what will be no doubt a very busy day. But I can tell you that the experience today was like none other. Not many people get to go to Moldova. Certainly not very many people get to go into the very, very rural regions of Moldova. And I can tell you, it's an absolute pleasure. And that speaks to the reason why it's just so important to kind of put your hand up to do these kind of events, because what you experience, you really can't experience anywhere else in life. It truly is a life-changing moment when you get to meet some people in these parts of the world that are living life just like everybody else. And that's what I really enjoy about it. Had a great full day with my colleague from Poland, our two interpreters from Moldova, an interpreter from Moldova and our driver from Moldova. So had a wonderful day, a very busy day. Now we're ending our day. We'll have a meal together. My colleague and I will plan out our route for tomorrow. We'll plan every stop out that we're going to make so that it's all very logical. We'll plan in there a little bit of time to rest during the day, because it will be a long day. You can't sort of go all day doing it. So it's going to be a night of planning. It was a wonderful day to experience the Moldovan countryside and meet some of the people. So very proud of their villages. I can't begin to tell you just how beautiful those villages were, decorated with flowers and monuments in the center of town, speaking to the people that were elders in the village, the countryside, the rolling, beautiful green hills and farmland peppered throughout like postage stamps. It was really quite spectacular to see. You know, again, it's such a misunderstood country and not a lot of people get the opportunity to go here. Just in the middle of the day, my driver pulled a couple of walnuts right off a tree, crushed them with his foot and handed me to eat. First time I've ever eaten a walnut right off a tree. So you get to experience things like that. You know, a big shout out to Global Affairs Canada for leaning into this and allowing Canadians to be a part of this. And certainly to my friends at CANADEM who sort of put all this stuff together, pick the people to go and make sure that they're properly prepared when they get out there. I want to tell you that it's an incredibly rewarding experience. I'd highly recommend it. So here I am. This is another night in Goldini, and tomorrow is election day, and it is sure to be quite a day, and I'll certainly report back on that. Well, it's 6 o'clock in the morning on the 20th of October, 2024. It's election day for the country of Moldova. Big day for the country. Not only is it their presidential election, but it's also their opportunity to select whether they want to plan a path towards joining the European Union. So two big decisions for the people of Moldova to make today. I'm in Glodini. Glodini is quite west of Chisinau. So as we talked about throughout this conversation, we've slowly moved our way out into the countryside. Yesterday was spent sorting out all of the polling stations that we're going to visit today. Today is going to be a very, very long day. Election day always is, no matter what country you're in. But today is going to be a long day. They open their polls at 7 in the morning and they close them at 9 p.m. at night. So that's quite an extended period to vote. Which means that we have to sort of bookend both of that with work as election observers as well. Not only observe the actual election, but observe the sort of opening of the stations and the counting of the ballots at the end of the day. So that's really what today is all about. Certainly this morning, we're up very early. We don't have breakfast or anything. We go right to the first polling station where we watch them go through their entire opening procedure, everything from taking the ballots out, laying the ballots down on all the desks, making sure everybody's in their right station, making sure all the ballot boxes are sealed, ready for ballots to go in them, make sure cameras are switched on. Here they have cameras that point down at the ballot boxes to show that people are putting the ballots in the boxes, and then they also turn those cameras around when the time comes to count at the people counting the ballots. So make sure all of that is up and set up. We'll be watching that for the first 30 minutes of the day. So we'll be at a polling station, 6:30 in the morning, watch them open their whole procedure, get everything ready, and then we'll watch the first voter come in at 7 o'clock in the morning. At 7 o'clock in the morning, then we start going from polling station to polling station to polling station throughout today. And we have forms that we fill out that just basically go over sort of, is it accessible? All the things that you would sort of want in a free and fair election. We just observe. And again, I can't stress enough that we're really here just to observe what we see. So we go through that through every polling station. We'll probably cover between 10 and maybe even 12 polling stations today. Again, back into the countryside. We've planned out our routes so that we're not on country roads in the dark, more during the day, and then more main highways such as it is in the evening. But again, it's proving to be a nice day. It's -1 right now. It's going up to 10 degrees. It will be a lovely day for sure. Go back out into the countryside where these folks are really agriculture driven. They're focused on their community to look at how much pride they take in their small villages. Flowers planted everywhere. These were originally sugar beet farmers in this region, and they produce most of the sugar for the Soviet Union back in the day. So they're very agriculture focused. The fields are just beautiful and spectacular, and the people are lovely as well. I often say, and I say to my colleagues, people are people no matter where you go. They're just genuine people. They want to talk to their families at supper time, and they have the same aspirations for their family, their children, their friends, and their neighbors. While the analogy, a rising tide floats all boats, doesn't really work in Moldova, landlocked, of course, but everybody here wants to see the other person do well, and you can really sense that, and you could feel that yesterday when we start meeting people in the various polling stations. So today is going to be a wonderful day. It is going to be sort of democracy unfolding in front of our eyes, and what a privilege it is to be a part of that. And that's exactly what, CANADEM and the Government Affairs Canada allows Canadians to do, is to get a glimpse at democracy in action in countries that are not used to having Canadians in their agriculture districts. And here we are helping out in the best way we can. And I want to tell you, we are very much appreciated being here as Canadians. They know that the sacrifices that we have made to come here, the distance that we've traveled, the time we've taken away from friends and family, and then they appreciate it, and you know that. So it's really, really worthwhile doing. I'll try my best to check back and forth here today, but it will be a little bit complicated as we go through the day. The day will end somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning by the time we get all the ballots back to the tabulation center. So it's going to be a long day, but it's going to be a very fulfilling day. So stay tuned, and I'll try to give you updates as the day goes on. But here we are in Glodini, Moldova, and about to head out on election day. Well, so it's now 10 o'clock in the morning on election day here in Moldova. We were able to witness the opening of the first polling station, and I want to tell you, it was executed with incredible efficiency. People showed up on time. They immediately went to their stations. They set everything up, laid out all of their ballots. The ballots here, again, there are 2 things people are deciding on here. They're deciding on the next president, but they're also deciding on a pathway to join the European Union. So there's two sets of ballots. Both ballots are produced in both Romanian and also in Russian. So 4 ballots in total, 2 in Romanian, 2 in Russian, 1 for presidential, 1 for the referendum. People get the choice to pick which language they want their ballot in. They also get the choice whether they want to vote in either one of those elections, so they can choose one or the other. Very sort of, it's democracy in action for sure. One of the first people we saw arrive today was a first-time voter, and they make a really big deal of a first-time voter. They have all of this sort of paraphernalia that they give the person. They stand up and they clap when the person finishes voting. So it's a real sort of a show for a first-time voter. The other thing that was really quite moving this morning is after they finish setting everything up, they seal off the ballot boxes ready to start the vote. Before the first voter arrives, everybody in the room stands and they play the Moldovan national anthem, and everybody stands and they play that, and then they go about their business. Kind of like the start of a hockey game, really. And that was also very moving. So, and then of course the voters were lined up at the door to come on in. One of the other things that they do is they put a big loudspeaker outside of the polling station, and they're starting to play sort of tradition Moldovan music. So loud music playing right out in front of the polling stations so that people, I guess, know where they are. And it's a bit of an atmosphere of good things are happening in here today. And you can really sense that. So polling stations all set up. Some of the polling stations are in schools, which are very nice settings, very warm and cozy. Some are in cultural settings, which don't even have heat. So the people are wrapped up in warm blankets, and they've got cushions on the floor where they put their feet so the cold air doesn't come up through the floor. So it's a little bit of both, but everybody is certainly dedicated to this process. And so that's sort of the start of election day here with the opening of a polling station. And now we go from polling station to polling station throughout the day. Well, hi, I'm Allan Dale, and I'm back in Goldini, Moldova. This is post-election, so this is the day after the presidential and the election on the referendum. Spent a full 20 hours yesterday in the field. So we left at 6 a.m. At an opening of a polling station and went right until 2 a.m. last night at the closing station. The people that we met along the way, absolutely spectacular. Everybody engaged and completely leaning into the democratic process. One woman stands out for me, pregnant by 8 months. She had been at a station from 6 a.m. until very close at 2 a.m. But right to the end, she was counting votes, leaning into it, part of it smiling with her colleagues. It was a really impressive thing to watch. And that's what it's all about. It's watching people work together in this democratic process. And for me, to be part of an international team was a privilege. It was an absolute privilege. And that's what CANADEM, and that's why it's so important to reach out and put your name on that list and be a part of this important work that's being done. Thank you to Global Affairs Canada. Yesterday was it was an emotionally charged day to watch first-time voters arrive at polling stations and people stand up and applaud for them. They were given badges, they were given wristbands, in some cases given roses from the local village for voting for the very first time. And then watching these old men and women that were coming in dressed in very traditional outfits, the old Russian babushka is kind of the image that comes to mind. And they've got their cane and they're making up the street, and I hold out my hand to help them up a broken stairway, and they just kind of push my hand away, like as if, get out of the way, I'm going to vote. And it's just so incredible to watch these old folks, just taking it literally step by step to make it into the polling station and vote. And just an incredible thing to watch. Overall, it was an incredible day yesterday, a long day to be sure. It ended at 2 a.m. at the District Election Commission, and the whole time, the team that was organizing us were just so concerned about our safety, making sure that we were okay on these dark roads in the countryside at 2 a.m. in the morning, and just you really felt like you were part of something bigger and that everybody was concerned about you. And for a team to come together so quickly in a foreign country like this and people from all around the world, it's an impressive thing to watch. You don't get to be a part of that very often, and that's what made it so very, very special. Today we'll be getting some debriefings on how everything went in our local region here, and then we make our way back into Chisinau in the next couple of days, and I'll certainly keep you in the conversation as we do that. But I want to tell you what an election day it was and what a privilege it was to be a part of it. So it's a great day now to explore a little bit of Balch. I've got a few hours off before we sort of call it a night and then head back into Chisinau tomorrow. Had our wrap-up session with our long-term observers, sort of all of the teams that were out into the country, came back together where we discussed, everything that we found. And it was remarkable, no matter how far apart we were spread, the stories were virtually the same, and again, a lot of what I talked about, very engaged people, such a lovely country, such wonderful countryside, and everybody had such a positive impression of Moldova. We are sort of sad to see one another go, but also quite tired, all of us to a person, and eager to sort of get back to our own lives until the next time something like this should pop up. And I tell you, it's an exciting thing to do. And this is sort of I'm in right now an old Soviet-era park, and you can see behind me an old Ferris wheel there, right in the middle of the park. Park itself is pretty nice, surrounded by, again, old sort of Soviet-era apartment buildings. It's a very nice sort of little setup right in the center of the city. So tomorrow into Chisinau, looking forward to getting back into that city, explore that a little bit, and meet up with the Canadians that were on the team and see how they made out in the other parts of the country. So for now, that's it. Well, now I'm back in Balch. And we've now said goodbye to our interpreters and our drivers. That is, I don't want to say an emotional time, but it certainly is an ending of an event, a significant event, really. It's a time when you've spent 4 days together, really in adverse conditions, I would argue, and now you get to say goodbye to them. These are folks that some of them have done this many times, and certainly for our interpreter, it was her first time. So her experience was as new and fresh as ours was to her beautiful country. So we get to say goodbye to them and, exchange of gifts. And, they gave us little trinkets from Moldova. We gave them trinkets from Canada, and in the case of my partner, from Poland. So that's always nice to exchange gifts that way. And you never know where you might wind up with those people again. So it's nice to meet people like that. And so now I'm waiting for our debriefings to start. You can see some of the international observers walking around the town, checking out the sites. It's a very, very industrial town, Balch, and basically, they had a big factory here back in the Soviet days where they used to make parts for submarines and for rockets. And a lot of people worked in the technology sector. Technicians and technologists worked here on Russian submarines and Russian missile systems back in the day. Those factories have sort of waned over time. You can see right behind me the flag, and there's a crest up there, and that crest is just placed over a Soviet crest. It's just like kind of laid over there. And right above me that's Stephen the Great, and that's the hero of the country, and he fought 47 wars here, and he's a great hero to this country. I'm also in sort of the town square that you can see, and there's a big, beautiful Orthodox church behind me there, and a big open square over here, a big wide open square. So beautiful center of the town, and it's great to be here in Balcha, Moldova. So the briefings will start soon, and I'll let you know how all of that goes. But it's a wonderful day, a day to say goodbye to people, and a day for the next adventure when we head back to Chisinau. Well, I'm Allan Dale from Gale Force Winds, and I am just finishing up a mission in Moldova. What a great time I've had. Why don't you introduce yourself? Okay. Tell me where you're from.
Okay, my name is Hillary Zimmerman, and I am from Whitehorse, Yukon.
That is a cool place to come from.
It sure is. And I've been getting notes from my family that while I've been gone, we got close to a foot of snow.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And I think it was minus 20 the other day.
Well, it's 20 degrees here in Chisinau, a beautiful day. Tell me about your experience. Is this the first time you've done this?
Actually, no. This is my third mission. Okay. So I went to Ukraine in 2019. I went to Bosnia two years ago, and so this is my third time.
Tell me about the experience. Like, what was this time like for you?
This time, actually, I would say was probably the most enjoyable time, because I feel like after 3 missions, it starts to sort of come together in terms of what you're here to do, the procedures, the forms, what you can expect. Election day, you know how long that day's going to be, and you get snacks and water. And so I actually felt like this time almost was the most meaningful, because I felt like I could dig a bit deeper, and I wasn't just sort of hanging on for dear life.
And tell me, where were you in the country?
Yeah, so
And you'll be excused from getting the names wrong.
Thank you.
Because they're tough.
Okay. So I was actually not that far from the capital. So we were about an hour north, and in a maybe 10,000 population city, Orhei. So from Orhei, my team of 2 actually had a slightly different sort of district, Telenesh. So it was unique because there wasn't a hotel for us to stay in that town. So we had to travel to that town, both for the familiarization day and then for election day, and that was about a 45-minute drive. So it did add, and it was quite rural. So the distances between the villages and the condition of some of the roads was definitely an adventure.
What was one thing that really jumped off the page for you about sort of meeting the people and being a part of this process?
I didn't know what to expect coming to Moldova, quite honestly. And I have been just so amazed by how kind every single polling station that we went to, the people there were so kind, so gracious, helpful, patient, and honestly, every single polling station. So I would say, the highlight for me was the people. The weather was quite lovely. So anyway, that's number 2. And I'll give you a third one. And, the countryside is just beautiful.
Isn't it though?
Like I didn't know what to expect. Yeah. And it is a lovely country. And the food is spectacular. And yeah.
This is it's a big commitment to do this. It's time away from family, it's time away from careers. What would you tell other Canadians that are looking at doing something like this? What would you say to them?
It is probably one of the most meaningful experiences that I have ever had. So it's scary. You really don't, that first time or even the second time, it's just like, I just don't know if I'm going to get this right. But it is so worth it. And I almost get, I feel emotional when I talk about it, to have the privilege to come to another country, to support the people and democracy and a fair election. I just can't believe that we can have this experience. So I would encourage everyone to try to have it. And it makes you then also kind of, when I go back to Canada, you know, I'm even then more interested and involved in like our democracy, right, and our government. So it's I think there's benefits then that you bring back to where, you know, where we live. But anyway, I would so recommend it.
What a beautiful explanation. Thank you for your service to not only Canada, because that's exactly what you've done here, but thank you to your service to the country of Moldova. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, I'm Allan Dale from Gale Force Winds. I've had an amazing experience here in Moldova, but I'm not alone. I've got Canadian colleagues with me. So why don't you introduce yourself? Tell me where you're from.
My name is Emilio Angeles. I'm from Ottawa, Canada.
So is this your first election doing this?
Yeah, it is my first election observation mission, and I consider myself really lucky to have Moldova as the first one.
Right.
Yeah, definitely a really interesting experience.
Tell me about how you were feeling coming into it. Like, I mean, it's a lot to sort of get your head around what you're about to do. Tell me what you were feeling going into it. Were you nervous?
Yeah, really nervous, I'd say. I think for me, I'd read a lot about O'Deer's work, function and work of election observation missions. But it's one thing to read about it, and of course it's another to actually be in the country and going through the process of being deployed. So yeah, it was really interesting.
So now you've come through the other end of it.
Yeah.
You've sort of done the business. What was your overall experience like? Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think it was fantastic. Just from a logistical standpoint, I thought everything was really well organized, and I thought it was really easy for newcomers to kind of get here, get settled, learn about what they'd be doing as a short-term observer, and get deployed abroad or deployed in the country, in Moldova. And yeah, just as a newbie, logistics and things aside, I thought from the material we provided and the things we read online, the politics here is really interesting. And you see it play out when you're out there in the field. So very good stuff.
Tell me what it felt like to work with such an international team with such sort of different perspectives on life.
Yeah, I think it was really humbling, you know, coming from Canada and being deployed in Europe to an election where there's a referendum happening and big questions about the future of the country going on. I think I really had a sort of inside look into what the regional perspective is on the election. Because so many people from different parts of the OSCE states were here, a lot of them had different views on the trajectory that Moldova was heading as far as the presidential election and the hope that they would join the EU. And I think they really demonstrated, our colleagues demonstrated an interest and an engagement in the regional politics that I think that maybe Canadians don't quite share in North America.
One big thing that jumped off the page for you, was it the people? Was it the scenery? What was it that jumped off the page?
Oh, a big question and great question. For me, I think it was the politics of it. A bit of a nerdy answer, but I think when reading about elections in Canada, I think a lot of people sort of take for granted the work that goes into it. And there's perhaps a bit of apathy involved in the importance of elections. But when you come to a country like Moldova, when there's both a presidential election and a referendum happening at the same time, you really get a sense of anxiety, a sense of concern of where the country is going, and people were really engaged in the outcome, which I'm not sure what we could often say for different levels of elections in Canada. So that for me really stuck out. Other than that, the country is beautiful. I was based in Chisinau, which is the capital city, and so first of all, lucky for me because it's my first mission. I felt like it was a good introduction to this line of work. But I got to see a lot of what sort of Moldova has to offer as far as the different sorts of architecture, the development of the city, and different views as well.
Now, tell me, you know, again, it's a privilege to do this. I know that you know that. And what would you say to other Canadians that might be looking at this and saying, should I be a part of this?
Be a part of it. It's worth it. I think for me, whenever I sort of travel, I look at it in sort of two ways. There's vacation, and then there's traveling in a more educational type of experience. They're obviously very distinct. But when you go on an election observation mission, it's a great opportunity to get to know a country beyond the resorts, and to really get more intimate with the issues that locals care about. And I think that goes beyond just landing in the airport and sightseeing. You really feel a more intimate relationship with the country, visiting in this way. So I would say, do it. It's worth taking the time off if you have it. And you won't regret it.
Thank you for your service to Canada, and thank you for your service to the country of Moldova.
Thank you.
So we're now leading up to the final debrief. I'm back in Chisinau, and you can see that I'm in another one of these wonderful town squares. In fact, I'm set up here on a chess and a backgammon table that's built right into the concrete, and there's people gathered around, children playing in the background there. Main thoroughfare with a big sort of pedestrian walkway right down the center. An absolutely spectacular city. Got a couple hours off here now before we start our formal debrief on how the whole thing went. So you can sort of see the theme of what's happening here. We started off in the city center here of Chisinau, got our briefings about what was to happen, started to head slowly out into our regions, stopped halfway, got a little bit more understanding about what was happening in the specific areas we were going, and then we were all dispatched out in teams of two, normally 3 teams of 2, so 6 of us went even further into an area that we had talked about called Goldini, and from there we circled all around that area, and you can imagine with 200 observers spread out across the entire region, gathering information, observing the entire process of the vote. So today, we now all come back into one main briefing hall where we go over sort of our observations. They talk about some of the trends that were happening throughout the observation period. Not making any assumptions or anything like that, just simply looking at the trends of things that were playing out over the entire election. It's going to be a kind of an exciting night for everybody to be back together again, sharing their sort of experiences from the various regions, both city and out into the countryside. And everybody will have had a whole different experience. You can imagine in a big, vibrant city like Chisinau, the polling stations are pretty close to one another, a very youthful population voting. Their experience would be completely different than what I had out in the countryside, where a lot of older folks out there voting, and it's all a beautiful thing to see play out, and all the experiences are different, yet they are very much the same in this electoral process. So we all come back together tonight, get that big final briefing, and this is the point of the evening that you really say your farewells to kind of your international friends, because what most groups do at this particular point is they get together by their country, and they normally meet with their ambassador or consul general or whatever, and they they meet and they talk to them a little bit about their experience. It's really the first opportunity you have to come back together as a group, in our case from Canada, and so that'll be fun too, right, to get that Canadian perspective on what it was that they did. And then of course tomorrow the flights start flying out, and one by one you lose your Canadian colleagues as they transit through Vienna or Warsaw or Frankfurt. So you lose your Canadian colleagues along the way, and not sure, quite honestly, when you again, but you've made friendships, you've done something together. It's quite an experience. It's quite a privilege to be a part of, and that's the kind of one thing that really stands out for me the most. It is in fact a true privilege to be a part of this. You know, you get invited into people's journeys, and when they're voting, you know, you watch those older folks, you're invited into their villages, you meet families, it's such a privilege to be a part of that, and it's not often you get to do that in life, and that's why doing these international observations are so vitally crucial, not only for the democratic process, but also for your own personal growth. I find, anyway, that you get to have these wonderful opportunities. You know, I talked about this before in the video I did on Serbia, and if you haven't seen that, I'm sure you can find it on the Gale Force Wins YouTube channel, or indeed on our website. But this is the experience that I watched my dad have, and I watched his life sort of transform in his retirement. He had a job, you know, all of his life, raised a family and all this, but in his retirement years, in his legacy career, he decided to do this international election observation, and you know, it changed his perspective on things later in life, and it sort of opened his eyes up to what the world is all about and all these wonderful experiences. And of course, back then when my dad was doing it, you know, the internet wasn't as vibrant as it is now, and certainly travel, while you could do it, it wasn't as easy as it is now. So for him, it was an even more amplified experience. But I can tell you, for me, it was a transformational experience as well. So, you know, I highly recommend this stuff for folks, and it's a real honor as well to sort of represent Canada while you're here. You don't sort of talk about it, you don't wear Canada anywhere, but when people ask where you're from and you say Canada, their eyes kind of light up. It's a nice reception to the word Canada, no matter, even if they don't sort of speak English or anything like that. The way they respond to you, the way they smile, the way their eyes light up, it leads me to believe that, you know, Canadians are sort of well respected in many parts of the world, and oftentimes we might forget that. But when you come to a place like this, you quickly realize just how privileged we are to be Canadian. So a big shout out to my friends at Global Affairs Canada for sort of being the conduit to allow all of this to happen. And of course, CANADEM. I mean, I can't begin to describe how vitally important it is, the work that they do. Not only sort of rostering people and finding people, but the logistics to get people here and setting them up and coordinating them. I mean, it's a lot of work, and every single one of them has done this work before, so they know what they're sending you into, and that's the other beauty of it. I mean, they've lived the experience, and they know just how powerful it can be. So looking forward to that big briefing tonight, and I'll certainly report on all of that afterwards. But right now, back in Chisinau, gonna spend a couple of hours just exploring the town. Well, that was a complete wrap-up for the election mission here in Moldova. Last evening, had our final Debrief with sort of the governing body that sort of oversaw all of our results here from Chisinau. And, a remarkable, the stories that we all shared were that of, similar things that we observed throughout our mission, and it was amazing just how similar all of our observations tended to be from across the entire country. So again, 200 of us met last night in Chisinau, shared our experiences, shared our our stories of the people, of the landscape, of the beauty of this country. It was so fascinating to hear everybody's perspective, their international perspective on this area. A great debrief to the whole sort of event, and everybody very appreciative that we had sort of come over to do this work. So it was a very wonderful sort of a debrief and end to the mission in that respect. And then later that evening, all the Canadians got together. So all the folks that were sent over here, both from a long-term perspective and a short-term perspective, we all came together for supper last night, as well as sort of the foreign affairs lead for this region came and joined us, and really we talked a little bit about the government of Canada's perspective on Moldova and their lens and their vision for how they see Canada being in this conversation with this wonderful country. And it too was simply refreshing to hear these perspectives and ideas and aspirations from everybody around the table. And we were just in the country for 7 days, but we had strong feelings around what we saw and the potential that this country has, and the relationship that can be developed here with Canada. So it was a remarkable evening in that respect. Today, we basically are now waiting to board the buses to head back to Chisinau Airport, make our way back to Canada through various parts of Europe. And today we'll probably all separate as Canadians, and may or may not meet on another mission, but have made friendships along the way, which is really a lot of what this is all about. And the international friendships that you make are also so keenly important. I can't stress enough just what an experience this is for Canadians to be a part of something like this, to be a part of an international team that so quickly gels together, works together, for the benefit of the entire organization, and go out there and do your business. It's not, tremendously hard work, but it certainly is physically demanding, as well as mentally demanding. You're on your game all the time, and it's important work, but it's the type of thing that I think everybody should have a look and say, if I can find that small little window in my life, maybe this is something that I kind of want to be a part of. For me, it's difficult sometimes to find that little sliver of time where you can fit things like this in. But when those opportunities come up and the stars align, it's pretty cool. This is my second mission. One to Serbia, now to Moldova. I can't begin to tell you just how much it's added to my perspective. It's added to my experience and my understanding of global issues and international relations. And you always have things to learn, and the people around you have interesting perspectives, and sometimes we don't necessarily see things that way. We might live in a bubble, but doing things like this allows us to open up our mind and look at different ways of doing things. So it's been a great experience. I would certainly highly encourage it, and that's a wrap for this edition of Gale Force Wins. And I want to thank you all for joining me on this journey to just an amazing country that is Moldova. And thank you for watching.
Thank you for tuning in to Gale Force Wins. That's Gale Force Wins, WINS.com.